What's up, Raider fans? Sam Gordon back in the Vegas Nation fan zone. It has been a busy week around the NFL and a very busy week, of course, for the Las Vegas Raiders as well. They have spent a considerable amount of resources revamping that defense, trying to get everything going, and trying to fix their cap situation and put forth a better team in 2021 they did in 2020. So far, really like what they did across that defensive line. Love the move of Yannick Ngakoue, a veteran but still young pass rusher that has a lot of upside, that has at least 8 sacks in all of his NFL seasons, and that has some familiarity with Gus Bradley. I think that is a big-time addition to the Raiders' defensive line. And then you talk about the depth they've added there with Solomon Thomas. You can go right on down the line. Really like what they have done, what they are doing. And let me be very clear, their work is not done yet. I think they still need some help on the back end with a free safety, whether that's in free agency, whether that's somebody like Malik Hooker. There are options in free agency, Deron Harmon, Trey Boston. I'm not necessarily sure. Could be somebody in the draft. But right now, the Raiders, I believe, assessing what they've done this last week or so, I believe they are a better team going into next season than they were this past season. And I understand that there have been some changes on the offensive line, but I think the moves made to improve that defense are going to pay dividends and make the team better overall. Of course, some work to be done on the offensive line. We will see what happens there. But with that said, I will be happy to answer any questions that anybody has, or address any comments or concerns, or just banter with Raider fans who want to join the chat in the Vegas Nation fan zone. So yeah, with that, we got a comment. Our first comment is from Fierce Raider 88. Mariota is back. Hashtag Raider Nation for life. Mariota is back. I think they came to an agreement that makes sense for both sides, where you keep Mariota in place as the backup quarterback, and you save a little money on that, what was supposed to be a cap hit of more than $10 million. And it makes sense for both teams. And I really think now that Marcus Mariota had the 2020 season to kind of get healthy, find his footing. Remember, he was banged up in Tennessee. It was kind of a reclamation project. And he had the 2020 season to get healthy, to get right, to kind of figure out who he was, and for the Raiders to really evaluate what they had. And with that said, we saw some of the potential that he had with the Raiders when Derek Carr went out on that Thursday night game in December against the Los Angeles Chargers. And he showed why he was the number 2 overall pick. He can make plays out of the pocket. He has a nice throwing touch in the pocket, and looked really good. So if he comes, now that he's back in the fold, I would expect him to maybe have some kind of role, whether that's like an occasional, like a Taysom Hill kind of role, I guess, where it's a couple plays a game where you can do some RPO stuff, some run pass option, or you just put him out there to kind of confuse the defense. He can still drop back and pass, or he can run some more traditional running kind of plays. There is some potential there for the Raiders to work him into some packages. Most important thing is that he's healthy and that he's back in the fold, still only 27 years old, and makes sense why they want him as a backup. Really surprised that other teams in the NFL that need starting quarterbacks didn't try and work with him to find a lower cap figure to bring them into town. You look at, I think, the Chicago Bears and the Washington football team are a couple prime examples that come to mind. But either way, he is back in Las Vegas, still only 27 years old with some upside. So Raider Moore says, Cassie Soto is awesome. Doug, you asked Yannick Ngakoue how he pronounces his name. Raider Moore, I agree. Cassie Soto is awesome. She does a tremendous job with all things Vegas Nation, and we are incredibly fortunate to have her. Raider Moore also says, excited so far too. A lot of young talent and free safety is a big need right now. And there's that's what, there's a draft. I mean, just if they don't add a safety in free agency, I don't think it's any reason to freak out or to panic. There are options in the draft. There's a deep draft class. There are starters that you can plug and play, and we know Gus Bradley's not afraid to play young players or play rookies. We've seen that throughout the course of his career. We've seen that in his various stops that rookies have an opportunity to have a big-time impact on his defense. And Raider Moore also says right tackle in the draft. Definitely agree there. I think every single season you see tackles or starting offensive linemen emerge as rookies, and they don't necessarily have to be first-round picks, second, third, fourth-round picks. Heck, sometimes you even see undrafted guys, come in there and find a role into the starting lineup right away. So it's definitely a priority. I mean, Trent Brown, granted he only played 16 or 32 games, but Trent Brown, when he was out there, was an effective player, and you don't just replace somebody like that. It's not just super easy to replace somebody like that. So you would expect them to scan the free agent market still and maybe evaluate to see if there's a veteran in there who's the right fit. But that is a position I expect they'll evaluate in the draft and try and use one of their earlier picks to find a starter, a plug-and-play guy on that right side of the offensive line. Desi Dude, Bombay J, what are your thoughts if we don't get Sherman? Who will we go after then? That's a good question. I think Sherman would be a good fit for obvious reasons. He's a veteran. He's experienced. He's familiar with Gus Bradley. He's played at a high level for a really long time. And even though he's going to be entering his age 33 season, I still think he has a lot of juice left in the tank. Still a pretty effective player with the Niners, and more importantly, a veteran that can be a good influence for this young secondary. We know the secondary is very young for the most part. You have starters in Jonathan Abram, Trayvon Mullen, and Damon Arnett, who are 25 and under, and that could use some development, or even 24 and under maybe. So if they, I'm not necessarily sure what they're going to do if they don't get Sherman. Maybe that's again a position they address in the draft. We know Nevin Lawson's coming back, Keyshawn Nixon's still in the fold, Amik Robertson, Isaiah Johnson. So there are a lot of D-backs on this roster. It just feels like a veteran would be kind of the icing on the cake, and obviously Sherman, what better veteran is there than him? But we're going to have to wait and see for that. So yeah, Fierce Raider 88 says he or she would love to see Mariota in some trick plays. Yeah, I think so too. I think we're starting to see with the creativity that some of these offensive coordinators, some of these teams have employed. There's a way to implement Marcus Mariota that doesn't hinder what you're doing offensively. That's not too gimmicky. I mean, again, he's a very good thrower of the football, all things considered. I believe one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL. And his legs and his mobility and the things he's able to do from an RPO standpoint are just a bonus. So there are ways to use him, definitely creative ways to use him that I think the Raiders would be wise to tap into. And let's be honest, I don't think they would have been interested in bringing him back unless they had some kind of role, envision him having some kind of role on this team in some capacity beyond just being a backup quarterback. Because that is still a lot of money for backup quarterbacks. So clearly they value his skill set and his services. He does some things that Derek Carr doesn't do, although I was really impressed with how mobile Derek Carr was and how he was able to use his athleticism to get out of the pocket and make plays throughout the course of the season. He had a fantastic year, and he's, I'm sure, going to want to build on that going into 2021. A couple more comments. I think that's the right move to bring him back. If Carr goes down, Marcus can still win games for us. I would agree. Marcus Mariota has won games as a starting NFL quarterback. He's made the playoffs before. He started in a playoff game. He has a playoff victory. It's not like he's an undrafted D2 or D3 guy. This guy has a big time pedigree, Heisman Trophy winner, former number 2 overall pick. You can say what you want about his NFL career so far and the struggles he had in Tennessee, but he was banged up there. He had a lot of injuries, and I don't think he was really ever in a system that really unlocked his skill set. I mean, you just think about how offensive coordinators and offensive coaching has really leaned into dual threat guys and really embraced their talents more so than ever the last few years. Imagine if he was in a system in Tennessee where he really got to use his legs. That was such a big part of his game at Oregon. He never really quite got to show them. So yes, I do think the Raiders know what they have with him, and that if Derek Carr goes out, that Marcus Mariota can fill in and do an admirable job with the talent that he has around him on the offensive line. Raider Moore, I believe signing Drake was to have a guy for plays Gruden had last season when drafting Bowden. He checks those boxes that they hoped he could be. And, the Drake signing was, I think it certainly caught me off guard a little bit. I didn't think backup running back or another running back was necessarily a position of need. But when you kind of, to your point, when you look at what he's able to do offensively, he is kind of a dual threat running back. Not only did he have 955 rushing yards last year, but he's had seasons in Miami where he was a big-time pass catcher. You go back to the 2018 season, the 53 receptions, the 477 yards, and most importantly, the 5 touchdowns. And then even in 2019 with Miami and Arizona, he has 50 receptions for 345 yards. So I know Josh Jacobs wanted to take a step forward in that pass catching role this past year, and he was better. But I think it's a little bit more of a natural fit for Kenyon Drake. And now you can spell Josh Jacobs a little bit. I think I think he kind of got worn down. We have to remember this is a running back that didn't have a crazy big workload when he was at Arizona. Comes in as a feature back as a rookie. A feature back is in his second year too, getting a lot of carries, a lot of work. It felt like he was just a step slow at times during the season, and having another established running back like Kenyon Drake to take some of that burden off of him. And on top of that, if Josh Jacobs goes down, Kenyon Drake has proven that he can handle a full workload. So he's a weapon that I think they're going to want to be versatile with and want to use him creatively and expect them. I mean, they didn't bring him necessarily a position of need, but it's another skill position kind of player to add to that offense that includes Darren Waller and that includes some young receivers that are expected to improve going into the 2021 season. Raider Moore, I appreciate your involvement in your activity. Tackles are deep this year in the draft. I agree. I think you can definitely find a starter at right tackle. It doesn't have to be a first-round pick. You can go in the second or third round. Best player available or best fit available in the first round is kind of what I'm expecting. And maybe that's a right tackle, but not necessarily. You can find somebody later, plug them in and play them and kind of balance out this offensive line. Raider Moore also says Miller needs a 5th-year option this offseason. He would be the first in 10 years. I looked up the average cost, and it said $10.6 million. Feels like the Raiders and Miller are going to want to try and work towards some kind of extension. I think he is an ascending player and has improved a little bit in each of his first 3 years and is really kind of solidified the left side of that offensive line. Pavle Nikolic, thank you for the question. Do you think we go defense in round 1 because tackle class is deep and we can get quality starter in round 2? Yeah, that's definitely an option for sure. I think defense is a free safety is probably still a little bit greater of a need just because you kind of want somebody to plug in and play right away that can do some things in coverage. And like we talked about, that tackle class is a little deeper. So yeah, I think defense is probably more likely, but you never know. I mean, it's the draft. It's the NFL draft. Things happen. Maybe somebody trades up and takes a defensive back that the Raiders are eyeing, or the free safeties the Raiders are eyeing, and they end up taking a tackle. I'm not necessarily sure. But I think that they're definitely going to explore going that route. And even though the defense has improved with these free agent signings, even though the defensive line we expect to be better with the pieces they've added and now how deep that unit is, you still want to make sure you have all your boxes checked. And they could definitely use another player on the back end. Raider Moore, Mariota was hurt most of the year and just came off IR before coming in when Carr got hurt. Health and practice will have him plugged in more. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And he was banged up throughout his tenure in Tennessee. I don't ever think he was really quite fully healthy, especially towards those last years. And then obviously he is benched in favor of Ryan Tannehill, and that worked out for them. So I think the 2020 season was really big for Mariota, just in rebuilding his confidence and continuing to find his identity as an NFL player. And I think the Raiders are happy to have him back in the fold, or else they wouldn't have brought him back. Desi Du Bombay, what's your call on how many wins versus losses this coming year? That's a good question. It's tough. I think it's a little too early to necessarily make a prediction. I mean, we know how tough this division is, right? I expect the Chargers to be a little better and to take a step forward with Justin Herbert in year 2 and with a new coach and a new staff in there, a defensive-minded coach, and how they're going to build that thing out. So I think they're going to be a little better. And obviously Kansas City is Kansas City. Now, the Raiders do figure to have a much better defense. And if they can sustain that level of offensive play that they did last year, they were a top 10 offense throughout the course of the season, finished in the top 10. And there were weeks and games where this was like, wow, this is a big-time offense. This offense has the potential to be very prolific, only for that to kind of be balanced out by a couple of duds later in the season. But it's a talented offense, and with the improvements on defense, I think kind of the expectation should be competing for one of those wild card berths. Whether that takes to a 9-7 record or a 10-6 record, I'm not exactly sure what it's going to require this year, just because of how everything shakes out and how the rest of the league shakes out and how those things break. We saw it obviously in the NFC East this past year, like a below 500 team make the playoffs. So maybe there's an avenue in which the second wild card berth or one of the wild card berths is like 8-8 this year. But I think based on what we saw from the Raiders last year, winning 6 of their first 9 games, beating Kansas City on the road, this feels like a team that is gearing up to compete for a playoff run, and I think that should be the expectation. Raider Moore, Booker was big last year. which he got $6 million with the Giants. Yeah, Booker was good. There's no doubt about it. Booker was good, and don't think the Raiders would have minded bringing him back, but not necessarily at that price point that he got with the Giants. And I think Kenyon Drake, even though he is more expensive than Booker, provides a little bit more upside. He's a couple years younger, and I think has proven himself more as a feature back throughout the course of his career. Again, Devontae Booker had a rock-solid season. Very happy for him that he's getting his money and being taken care of in New York. But it made sense for the Raiders to move on. And now they are set with Josh Jacobs in the backfield alongside Kenyon Drake, two guys that can be feature backs and two guys that kind of have differing skill sets with Kenyon Drake adding that pass catching ability. Raider Moore, really appreciate your activity and your comments. You're giving me plenty of stuff to talk about. There's a deadline for 2018 first-round picks to sign 5-year options. McFadden was the last one to get the extension. Yeah, and that was quite some time ago. And the McFadden thing, I mean, he was so talented. I mean, he was almost kind of the what if. I mean, you simulate his career 1,000 times, and I think there's a world, and 800 or 900 of those times he ends up in the Hall of Fame just with his ability, his size, speed, and strength. But he never really quite figured it out with the Raiders. So yeah, I think it's important to get Miller back in the fold. He is again an ascending left tackle, an improving player in this league. He's young, and you want to lock up Derek Carr's blind side, make sure he's set, make sure he's protected, and then continue to build out the rest of the offensive line from there. We know Andre James looks to be the center of the future, and the Raiders rewarded him with a contract extension. He's going to get his opportunity. He basically had a couple developmental years. He only played 12% of the offensive snaps 2019. Didn't play any offense last year. Got to sit behind that veteran offensive line and learn. So this is part of the business, right? You're restructuring that offensive line and kind of dispersing the money around, moving things around. That offensive line was a strength with those veterans last year, and it's going to be on Tom Cable and some of the younger guys. Some of the younger guys to take a step forward this year and kind of sort that thing out now that Rodney Hudson, Gabe Jackson, and Trent Brown, three pretty reliable guys, have moved on. The Aguilar thing, obviously, Raider Moore says the same thing with Aguilar, $13 million. Aguilar was a big-time player, no doubt about that, had a career year with the Raiders, had the best season of his career, was big-time, and that's why he got rewarded with big-time dollars from a team like New England that was in sore need of playmaking. The Raiders have playmaking, even without Aguilar. They've got a playmaker, one of the best in the league, guy by the name of Darren Waller, who I know you guys are all familiar with. Take position out of the equation. He's one of the most dangerous pass catchers in the NFL. So as the primary option, as long as he's in the fold, he's the primary option. And I think you look at John Brown, more affordable, but can at least duplicate some of the things that Nelson Aguilar was able to do. Now, he's a little older, going to be 31, but we know he can still get deep, and he's a guy that's had a couple 1,000-yard seasons in his carear. So his track record for production is a little better than Aguilar's, and at this moment in time, a little bit more cost effective. So, yeah, that's where things stand there. And let's not forget the rest of the receiving core, right? You're counting on a step forward from Henry Ruggs. You're counting on a step forward from Brian Edwards. You still have Zay Jones, who's brought back into the fold as he's becoming, a veteran now as he enters his mid-20s. Maybe you can get some production out of him. And then Hunter Renfrow is rock solid in the slot. A couple really solid years after coming out of Clemson. So to Raider Moore's point, as good as Nelson Aguilar was last year, don't think the Raiders. Clearly, he wasn't in their budget for that price point. He moves on to New England. Good for him. Gets his money, gets taken care of, and he has a fit in New England now where he's going to be one of their primary pass catchers on the perimeter. A revamped New England offense after seeing what Tom Brady had to work with in 2019 and then Cam Newton in 2020. Anthony Miller, thank you, man. I appreciate that. I did not mean to sneeze while doing this, but as you know, things happen. So yeah, Raider Moore with another question for me as we're going to get ready here to start wrapping it up. So if you guys have questions, get them in. Please get them in if you can, because we are going to start wrapping up. But with 8 picks in the 6 rounds of the draft, any chance Raiders trade a pick or package a deal for a player they want? Yeah, I think there's always a chance. I think it kind of depends who becomes available. You're always looking to upgrade your team, and if somebody's disgruntled and there's a fit there where there's a salary cap fit and a personnel fit and there's a veteran player, yeah, it makes sense to kind of explore what's out there. I don't necessarily think a trade is imminent, but to your question, is there any chance that the Raiders trade a pick? Yeah, I think there's definitely a chance. You definitely doesn't hurt having veterans or established players. They offer. There's a lot less of an unknown there when you have a veteran player or an established player. I mean, you're always kind of rolling the dice, even though we all think some rookies are slam dunks, and there's always good impact rookie players and young players as you can develop. the draft is still, in a lot of ways a crapshoot. Is where if you have a couple years of game tape on a guy, know what he has, know what he brings to the table, you have a better evaluation and can bring him in. So with that said, yes, I definitely believe there's a chance that the Raiders trade a pick or a package, but I wouldn't necessarily expect that. So we are, again, we're getting ready to wrap up, guys. If there's any questions, please feel free to fire them over into the chat. Again, just from my perspective, Sam Gordon with Vegas Nation, with the Las Vegas Review-Journal, I do think the Raiders have addressed their biggest need, which was defensive line, which was depth on the defensive line with Yannick Ngakoue, Solomon Thomas, so on and so forth. You add, all of a sudden you have a number of players. You have a rotation. You can keep that defensive line fresh, generate more of a pass rush. You have your kind of X factor, big play guy with Yannick Ngakoue who can make a game-changing play at any time. And that is going to help the linebackers. It's going to help the safeties and corners on the back end. And in theory, it's going to change the trajectory of the defense. Mike Nizukur, do I think that Edwards will start ahead of Brown? I mean, just where we're at right now in March, I think there's probably a little bit higher of a chance of Brown starting just because he's a kind of more of a proven commodity and he has that deep speed. I think Edwards, as we saw this year, is still kind of a little bit more in the developmental stage. Depends what kind of growth he shows from year one to year two and what kind of training camp he has, because he does have the size and the requisite tools, theoretically, to become one of those possession kind of receivers, those big red zone targets, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. He can make a play. He can get open, shield somebody off, make a big catch, a crucial catch in a key situation. Worldwide, Anthony Perez, many people are going to be surprised how the defense of Gus, their defense is going to be called the League of Doom, BM. Gus Bradley is a proven defensive coordinator who has developed big-time players in this league for a long time. Like you said, he's very responsible for the development of a Legion of Boom, has helped young players become all pros, and credit to those players as well for taking the coaching and developing on their own too, doing what they have to do. I think he's a great hire. I think he's a great fit, and I think his cover 3 scheme that he mostly employs, right? No team in the NFL played more cover 3 than the Chargers last season. I think the cover 3 scheme he's going to employ is more conducive to the personnel that the Raiders have than Paul Gunther's cover 6 scheme. Excited to see how he implements his schemes throughout the course of the year and what he does to get more out of this defense. So with that said, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all the fans, everybody out there, ladies and gentlemen, who are chiming in on the comments, giving me things to talk about. I think it's been an exciting free agent period. There's still some work to be done, far from a finished roster and a perfect roster. But that's what the Raiders have these next couple of weeks for, and that's what they're going to do their draft evaluations for. So, again, I'm Sam Gordon. Follow me on Twitter at 5SamGordon. Follow all of our work at Vegas Nation. That's VegasNation.com, ReviewJournal.com. Until next time, make sure you're following all our stuff, and we will keep you posted to the best of our ability. I'm Sam Gordon. Take care.